Officials from Israel, the Palestinian Authority, the US, Jordan and Egypt are meeting in the city of Aqaba in Jordan. They're discussing ways of de-escalating the recent tensions in the occupied West Bank. But many Palestinians say the global community wants to maintain Israel's military occupation. Yada Ibrahim reports.
It's hard to miss growing Palestinian support for armed groups. The latest example was seen as thousands demonstrated across the occupied West Bank at midnight, responding to a call by the Lion's Den armed group. 11 Palestinians were killed in an Israeli raid on the city of Nablus on Wednesday. Some were fighters from the group. Now, Palestinian officials have flown to Jordan to attend a security summit with Israel organized by the US. Egyptian and Jordanian officials are also there. The meeting on Sunday is an attempt to de-escalate growing tensions and re-establish Palestinian security control in Nablus and Jenin, two cities where fighters are operating.
The Americans don't want a full-blown escalation that would destabilize the region at a time they and the rest of the world are busy with Ukraine and its ramifications. The worst that could happen is we implement their plan to push the PA security to take over from the Israeli occupation. That would lead to civil war.
Palestine depends on international aid, and a large sum of the money it gets goes to the security forces. Most graduates from this military academy end up joining the ranks of Palestinian Authority security forces. Even when aid has fluctuated, support for the security establishment hasn't stopped. Critics say such heavy international investment in the security forces disempowers Palestinians, and many question coordination between the Palestinian Authority and Israel on security.
Nearly 30% of international aid to the Palestinian Authority goes towards security. When the Palestinian Authority was established, the main goal of international aid was to keep the peace process going. But this has changed over the years, and many say that the goal now is to ensure stability.
While many world leaders are calling for de-escalation and tension, Palestinians say they're missing the obvious problem, Israel's military occupation. And without addressing that, they say any other discussions will only prolong it. Nida Ibrahim, Al Jazeera, the occupied West Bank.
Al Jazeera senior political analyst Mahmoud Bashar is joining me now in the studio. Good to have you with us, as always. With regard to this meeting, is this a meeting that the Palestinian Authority had to go to? Did it really have no other option?
Well, it does have options. And that's what most Palestinian factions, most Palestinian parties, much of the Palestinian public opinion has demanded that it does not go to such a meeting, that it's preferable for the Palestinian Authority to be more in touch, intact with its own people rather than with the demands of Israel and the United States. But the Palestinian Authority for a long time has been hostage to a diplomatic process that's basically run from Washington. And because of the fear that Israel is increasing its repression in the occupied territories, increasing its illegal settlements, Palestine feels that it needs to go back to the United States. It tried the United Nations, as you know, but that did not work very well. The United States has promised that it will bring Israel to the table. But instead of discussing the end of occupation, we are discussing securing the occupation. Instead of discussing a return to diplomacy, we are discussing the return to security. And instead of discussing peace, now we are discussing coexistence with a military occupation.
You're talking about the pushback that the Palestinian Authority has had about the fact that it is going to go to this meeting, particularly, of course, some of the armed groups that we know about. How much is it a risk to the Palestinian Authority itself to actually be making this decision to go to to this meeting?
I think it's quite risky, especially now that there are more and more armed groups within Palestinian refugee camps, within the Palestinian cities like Jenin, Nablus, and others, as well as refugee camps in the south. And I think it's going to be very hard for the Palestinian Authority to take control of without a lot of Palestinian casualties, a lot of Palestinian divisions and suffering and so on and so forth. But what is required in this Aqaba summit is for the Palestinians to take on the security of the occupation so that Israel doesn't do it itself. The only way Netanyahu is going to accept that Israeli forces don't go in and kill more Palestinians in Jenin and Nablus is for the Palestinian Authority to do it itself. But the Palestinian Authority would be quite foolish if it will be responsible for a Palestinian civil war in order to defend Israel. But by the way, just to put that in perspective, and it's important for our viewers around the world, because I'm sure no one or hardly anyone remembers that there was an Aqaba meeting 20 years ago, this year. 20 years ago, back this summer, there was an Aqaba meeting hosted by King Abdullah. But who attended that meeting? President Bush, Prime Minister Sharon. It was a summit of leaders discussing a vision of two-state solution. That was then. Today, we have mid and low-level technocrats and security advisors trying to implement, trying to reinforce Israeli occupation. So you can imagine from 20 years back to now how dreadful the situation has devolved into.
Marwan Bashara, Al Jazeera's senior political analyst. As always, thank you very much indeed.